The main hydraulic line burst, and the rudder stuck hard at 20 degrees port. We were crossing the Columbia River bar. The ship swung toward the south jetty. If we hit the rocks, the hull would breach instantly. I was the chief mate on board a 20-year-old Panamax bulk carrier. We were inbound for Portland to load grain. The ship was light, riding high in the water, which made handling difficult in the swell. The draft was shallow, but the propeller was fully submerged. We had a river pilot on the bridge. He was a calm man, experienced with the bar. The captain stood on the starboard wing, watching the sea state. I was at the chart table, logging our position and monitoring the GPS. The helmsman was an older, able seaman, steady and reliable. The weather was clear, but the swell was heavy from the west. We had a following sea pushing the stern around. This required constant rudder corrections to keep the ship on the leading lights. We were making about 12 knots over the ground with the flood tide helping us. The channel is narrow there. On either side, the jetties are made of large black rocks. You do not want to go near them. We had passed the sea buoy and were committed to the entrance. The pilot ordered a course adjustment to 105. The helmsman repeated the order and turned to the wheel. The rudder angle indicator moved to 5 degrees starboard. The ship responded slowly, as big ships do. The bow began to swing right. The pilot watched the swing and ordered midships. The helmsman brought the wheel back to center. If you're enjoying this story, please consider subscribing. It helps this channel reach more sailors. Thank you. The routine continued for another 10 minutes. We were approaching the narrowest part of the entrance. The swell picked up as the depth decreased. The ship rolled gently. I checked the course recorder. Everything looked normal. The engine was at half ahead. The vibration of the diesel was a constant hum in the deck plates. We were focused on the transit. There was no conversation, just the pilot's commands and the helmsman's repetition. Then the problem appeared. The pilot ordered port 10. We needed to correct for a set to the south. The helmsman turned to the wheel. Port 10, sir. I looked at the rudder angle indicator. It moved to 10 degrees port. The ship started to swing left. The pilot watched the bow. The swing was faster than expected because of the following sea pushing the stern. Midships, the pilot said. The helmsman spun the wheel back to 0. Wheel is amidships, sir, the helmsman said. I looked at the indicator. It was still at 10 degrees port. Rudder is not responding, the helmsman said. His voice was flat. I stepped to the console. The indicator was frozen. Hard to starboard, the pilot said, testing it. The helmsman spun the wheel all the way to the right. Wheel hard to starboard. The indicator stayed at 10 degrees port. The ship continued to swing left. We were turning directly toward the black rocks of the North Jetty. The crew reacted immediately. Steering failure, I announced. Switch to port pump, the captain ordered from the wing. He stepped inside, checking the panel. I flipped the switch to engage the standby hydraulic pump. The green light flickered, then turned red. A low-pressure alarm started screaming on the console. It was a harsh mechanical noise. No pressure on port pump, I said. Try starboard again, the captain said. I cycled the switches. Both low-pressure alarms were now sounding. The gauge for the hydraulic system dropped to 0. The first attempt had failed. The rudder was hydraulically locked at 10 degrees port. The ship was turning left, crossing the center of the channel. The distance to the North Jetty was decreasing rapidly. We were doing 12 knots. At this speed and angle, we would hit the rocks in less than 3 minutes. The pressure increased. The pilot looked at the captain. We need to stop the swing, the pilot said. She's broadside to the swell. A large wave hit the starboard quarter. The ship rolled heavily. The bow yawed further to port. We were pointing 40 degrees off our course line now. The North Jetty was visible through the front windows. The waves were breaking white over the rocks. Engine full astern, the captain said. Full astern, I repeated. I grabbed the telegraph and rang it down. The engine room answered within seconds. The vibration changed as the main engine stopped, then the heavy thud of starting air, and finally the shudder of the shaft turning in reverse. This was a risky decision. Going full astern on a single-screw ship usually walks the stern to port, which would push the bow to starboard. That would help us. But we were moving fast. The propeller needed to bite the water hard to overcome the momentum and the rudder angle. Drop the starboard anchor, the pilot suggested. Too deep, the captain said. It won't hold at this speed. We'll rip the windlass off the deck. The captain was right. We had to rely on the engine. The ship shuddered violently as the propeller churned astern. The white water from the prop wash reached the midship section. We held our breath. The bow was pointing straight at the rocks. I could see the individual stones. The gap was maybe 200 meters. The ship slowed. The stern began to walk to port. The bow hesitated in its swing to the left. "She's checking," the pilot said, but the rudder was still jammed. The swing stopped, but we weren't turning back yet. We were drifting sideways toward the jetty now, carried by our forward momentum and the incoming tide. "Engine room," the captain called on the phone. "What is the situation?" I listened to the reply on the speaker. The second engineer was yelling, "Tadoin, hydraulic oil everywhere, main line ruptured, tank is empty." "Can we steer manually?" the captain asked. "Murray, we have no oil pressure. System is empty. We need to bypass." "Do it," the captain said. We're dead in the water now, drifting broadside. The north jetty was close enough that I could hear the waves crashing on it over the sound of our engine. "Stop engine," the pilot said. "We are backing into the channel edge." I rang stop. The vibration ceased. The silence on the bridge was heavy. The ship was motionless in the water, but the current was pushing us. We were safe from the rocks for the moment, but we were a sitting duck in the channel entrance. A container ship was outbound, 2 miles away, heading for us. "We need emergency steering," the captain said, "and chief mate go aft. Take the bosun, rig the emergency gear." "On my way," I said. I grabbed my radio and ran out of the wheelhouse. I moved fast down the internal stairs. The emergency steering gear is located in the steering flat, right above the rudder stock at the very stern of the ship. It is a loud, hot steel room. I met the bosun on the main deck. "Steering flat, fast," I said. We ran along the deck. The ship rolled in the swell. Spray came over the rail. We reached the watertight door to the steering gear room. I undogged the clips and pushed it open. The smell hit us first. Hot hydraulic oil. It was a thick, choking mist. The floor plates were slick with red fluid. The second engineer was there, covered in oil. He was sliding around, trying to close a valve. "Mate, don't slip," he shouted. The big rams that pushed the rudder were silent. The pressure gauges all read 0. "We have to use the hand pump," the engineer said. "It's the only way." The hand pump is a manual hydraulic backup. It requires physical force to move the rudder. It is slow, painfully slow. "Bridge, this is Mate," I called on the radio in the steering flat. "Mate, we have traffic inbound," the captain said. "We need 20 degrees starboard immediately to clear the channel." "Understood. 20 starboard." I looked at the bosun and the engineer. We grabbed the long steel handles of the manual pump. "Pump," I said. We started to heave, up and down. The resistance was immense. The rudder weighs tons. The water pressure against it was massive. We pumped furiously. Sweat broke out instantly. I watched the local rudder angle indicator on the differential. It moved a fraction of a degree. "Keep going," I said. "Faster." We pumped. The metal clanged. The floor was slippery. It was hard to get traction. The indicator crept to 15 port, then 10 port. "Bridge, rudder is passing 10 port, I said, breathless. "Faster, mate. The outbound ship is signaling," the captain said. The pressure was increasing. We were 3 men trying to turn a 60,000-ton ship with our bare hands. The heat in the room was rising. My arms burned. The bosun grunted with every stroke. The engineer slipped but caught himself on a pipe. We hit 0. Midships. "Midships," I called. "Give me starboard now," the captain replied. We kept pumping. 10 minutes of hard labor to move it 20 degrees. We got it to 5 starboard. "Holding 5. "Starboard," I said. "That's not enough," the captain said. "We are drifting into the outbound lane." We were exhausted, but we couldn't stop. We were the only steering the ship had. The oil on the floor was spreading. The danger wasn't over. We had to clear the channel before the other ship reached us. The outbound container ship was a wall of steel blocking the view through the starboard scuttle. We were still in the steering flat, pumping the handles. The air was thick with oil mist and the smell of sweat. The deck vibrated as the captain gave a kick of dead slow ahead. He needed water flow over the rudder to make our 5 degrees of angle effective. "She's coming left," the captain said on the radio. "Slowly, keep pumping." "Heaving," I said. My arms felt like lead. The bosun was breathing hard, a wet, rattling sound. The second engineer checked the reservoir. Oil is low, he said. We are losing fluid in the hand pump circuit too. The problem was clear. The leak wasn't just in the main system. It was a fracture in the block that fed the emergency stand. We were losing pressure. The handle offered less resistance on the downstroke. Bridge, we are losing hydraulic pressure, I reported. Copy that, the captain replied. Traffic is passing now. Stand by. We felt the wash of the other ship hit our hull. The steering flat lurched. We grabbed the handrails. The rudder stock groaned as the water force tried to shove the rudder back to port. Hold it, the engineer yelled. We leaned on the pump handles to lock the hydraulic pressure. The gauge needle fluttered. The rudder held at 5 degrees starboard. The container ship cleared us by less than a cable's length. We were safe from collision, but we were drifting toward the shallow water of Peacock Spit. The pressure increased immediately. The tide was turning. The ebb current meets the river flow at the bar, creating turbulent water. The ship began to wallow. Mate, the captain said, we need 20 degrees port to come back to the channel center. The current is setting us onto the sands. Pump is failing, I said. We can't build pressure. We have no steering. Confirm, no hydraulic steering, manual or main. We are drifting fast, the captain said. Rig the emergency relieving tackle. Use the chain blocks. Manual control. This was a risky decision. It meant disconnecting the hydraulic rams from the tiller head. Once those pins were out, the rudder would be free swinging. If the water caught it, the massive steel tiller could swing violently and crush anyone standing near it. We had to secure it with chains first. Bosun, get the chain blocks, I ordered. Engineer, get the sledgehammer and the drift punch. We moved fast. The emergency tackle is heavy gear stored on the bulkhead. We dragged the 2-ton chain hoists across the oily deck plates. We shackled one to the port side frame and one to the starboard side. We hooked the other ends to the eye pads on the tiller head. Take up the slack, I said. We pulled the chains until they were tight. The rudder was now held by the hoists, not the hydraulics. Ready to disconnect rams, Tom, I told the engineer. We had to knock the heavy steel pins out of the hydraulic linkage. The ship rolled heavily in the confused seas. The tiller arm jerked against the chains. Hit it, I said. The engineer swung the sledgehammer. Clang. The pin didn't move. It was under load. Slack port, heave starboard, I told the bosun. We adjusted the tension to take the weight off the pin. Again. Clang. The pin moved an inch. Keep hitting. The engineer struck it 3 more times. The pin shot out and clattered on the deck. The port ram was disconnected. Now the starboard ram. The ship took a heavy roll. The rudder tried to swing. The chains snapped tight, straining under the load. The hook on the port block started to straighten. Chain is slipping, the bosun shouted. We had a failure. The port chain hoist wasn't rated for the shock load of the sea swell hitting the rudder. The hook bent further. If it snapped, the rudder would swing wild to starboard, smashing the ram we just disconnected and potentially killing the engineer. Get a stopper on it, I yelled. I grabbed a mooring line from the corner. I looped it around the tiller head and tied it off to a bit. It was a temporary fix. Hit the second pin, I said. Fast. The engineer swung. The second pin flew out. The rudder was now disconnected from the ship's systems. It was held only by one bent chain hoist and a piece of rope. The ship was rolling 10 degrees. The tiller arm fought against the restraints like a trapped animal. We had to regain control through teamwork. Replace the port hoist, I said. Bosun, bring the spare from the store. It's heavy, sir. Drag it. While the bosun ran, I held the rope stopper. I could feel the power of the ocean vibrating through the hemp. My hands burned. The engineer tightened the starboard chain to take the load. The bosun returned, dragging the spare block. We hooked it up quickly. Heave on 3, I said. We transferred the load. The bent hook fell to the deck. We were secure. Bridge, this is mate. We have mechanical control. Rudder is on the chain blocks. Very good, the captain said. His voice was tight. Hard to port. I need it now. We are 2 cables from the shoal. Heave port, slack starboard, I ordered. The bosun pulled the chain on the port block. The engineer released the chain on the starboard block. Click, clack, click, clack. The sound was rhythmic and slow. The tiller arm moved inches at a time. It was back-breaking work. To move the rudder 1 degree took 20 pulls of the chain. Faster, I said. We found a rhythm. I jumped in to help the bosun. We pulled in unison. Heave, slack, heave, slack. Rudder is 5 left, I called. More, the captain said. Give me 15. We worked for 10 minutes without stopping. The sweat soaked through my coveralls. The oil on the floor made footing treacherous. Every time the ship rolled, the weight of the rudder fought us. We had to lock the chains, wait for the roll, then heave again. Finally, the indicator showed 15 degrees port. 15 port, I gasped into the radio. She's turning, the captain said, holding the line. Good work. Keep it there. We stood there, chests heaving, holding the chains. We weren't safe yet. We were just steering. Don't let it slip, I told the men. We watched the tiller arm. It vibrated constantly. The chains were tight as piano strings. Bridge, how long to anchorage? I asked. 2 hours, the captain said. You have to steer her like this for 2 hours. The resolution of the immediate crisis was factual. We had established a manual steering method that worked. We were clear of the immediate rocks and the outbound traffic. But we were exhausted, covered in oil, and facing a long transit up the river using hand-operated chains to steer a Panamax vessel. Bosun, call the pumpman, I said. We need fresh hands. We'll rotate in shifts. 2 men on the chains, 1 man resting. Aye, sir, the bosun said. He wiped grease from his forehead. I looked at the linkage. The hydraulic rams were retracted and useless. We were sailing like they did in the 1800s, using mechanical leverage against the sea. Prepare to adjust, the captain called, midships. Slack port, heave starboard, I said. We started pulling the chains again. The rhythm resumed. Click-clack. The ship moved slowly up the river. We were alive. The transit to the Astoria anchorage took 2 hours and 15 minutes. It was the longest watch of my life. We established a rotation in the steering flat. The work was too heavy for one team to sustain. I kept the bosun and the second engineer on the chains for the first 30 minutes. Then I rotated in the pumpman and the ordinary seaman. I stayed on the radio the entire time, translating the captain's degrees into chain links. The system was crude. To move the rudder 5 degrees, we had to pull the chain on one side for about 20 strokes while slacking the other side exactly the same amount. If we slacked too fast, the rudder would flop loose and bang against the stops. If we slacked too slow, the pulling team couldn't move the tiller. It required perfect coordination. Bridge, rudder is midships, I reported. Steer course 110, the captain replied. Pilot requests 2 degrees starboard to hold against the current. 2 degrees starboard, aye. I turned to the pumpman. Heave starboard, 6 clicks, slow. Click-clack, click-clack. The chain block gears ground together. The heavy steel tiller arm crept to the right. Holding 2 starboard, I said. The main problem was the lag. In a normal hydraulic system, the rudder moves instantly. With chain blocks, there was a 30-second delay between the order and the result. The pilot on the bridge had to anticipate every move. If he ordered a turn too late, we would miss the bend in the channel. We passed under the Astoria Megler Bridge. I couldn't see it, but I could hear the echo of our main engine changing pitch off the bridge pilings. The water in the steering flat was sloshing in the bilges. The hydraulic oil was still slick under our boots. We had thrown sawdust down to get traction, so now it was a paste of red oil and wood chips. Prepare for anchorage, the captain announced. We need to turn the ship 180 degrees to face the ebb tide. This was the critical maneuver. We had to turn the ship around in the narrow anchorage area without hitting the sandbanks or other anchored vessels. Usually you use the rudder hard over and a kick of the engine. We didn't have hard over. We had slowly cranking to 20 degrees. Mate, we need 20 degrees port, max speed on the chains, the captain said. All hands, I said. Let's go. Heave port. The 4 crew members grabbed the chains. I grabbed the slack end to help clear it. We pulled. The heat in the room was stifling. The ventilation fans were running, but the exertion made the air feel thin. Heave, slack. Heave, slack. Passing 10 degrees, I called. Keep it coming, the captain said. Engine half ahead. The deck vibrated. The wash from the propeller hit the rudder. The tiller fought us. The chains sang under the tension. We were fighting the entire thrust of the propeller. 15 degrees. More, the captain said. We are starting the swing. The ship began to turn. I could feel the heel as the centrifugal force took over. 20 degrees port. Holding, I gasped. Hold fast. Don't let it slip, the captain ordered. We locked the chain blocks. We stood back, breathing hard. The tiller arm shuddered violently as the water turbulence battered the rudder blade. The chain links bit into the sprockets. If a link failed now, the rudder would snap back to amidships, and we would lose the turn. We would plow into the mudbank. "Midships," the captain shouted. "Now check the swing." "Slack port, heave starboard, fast," I yelled. This was the hardest part. The rudder wanted to stay at port because of the water pressure. We had to force it back. The men pulled frantically. The chains rattled. "5 port, 0, 5 starboard. Meet her," the captain said. "Steady on, heading 290. We fine-tuned the chains. 1 click left, 1 click right. "Dead slow ahead," the captain said. "Stand by anchor." I could hear the chief officer on the bow through the radio. "Anchor party, ready." "Let go starboard anchor," the pilot ordered. We heard the distant roar of the chain running out through the hawse pipe. The ship shuddered. "Anchor is bottom," the chief reported. "Engines stop, finished with engines," the captain said. The silence that followed was sudden. The vibration in the deck plates stopped. The only sound was the heavy breathing of the 5 men in the steering flat and the gentle creaking of the tiller arm as the ship settled into the current. "Secure the gear," I said. "Lash the tiller amidships." We used heavy mooring ropes to tie the tiller arm to the ship's frame, taking the load off the chain blocks. The rudder was locked. The ship was safe. "Bridge, this is mate. Emergency steering secured. Rudder is lashed." "Thank you, mate," the captain said. "Good job. Send the men up for food." I looked at the crew. They were covered in grease, sweat, and sawdust. Their coveralls were ruined. Their hands were black, but nobody was hurt. We had brought a dead ship into a safe anchorage using nothing but muscle and chain hoists. We stayed at anchor for 3 days. The next morning, 2 harbor tugs arrived from Portland to tow us to the repair berth. We couldn't steer, so we were a dead tow. 1 tug made up on the bow, the other on the stern to act as our rudder. The Coast Guard inspectors boarded at 800. They went straight to the steering flat. They took photos of the oil, the sawdust, and the chain blocks still hanging from the overhead. They didn't say much. They just nodded. When you see a jury-rigged repair that actually works, there isn't much to say. It's just seamanship. The company sent a hydraulic technician. We found the cause of the failure. It was a high-pressure flexible hose on the return line that had burst. It was rated for 5,000 psi. It had blown out at the crimp fitting. When it burst, it dumped the entire hydraulic reservoir into the bilge in under 2 minutes. Because the system was a closed loop with a common tank for both pumps, we lost everything. We spent 2 days cleaning that steering flat. We used rags, degreaser, and buckets. We hauled 50 gallons of waste oil up the stairs by hand. It's a smell you never get out of your nose. The captain didn't give a speech. That's not how it works. At dinner that night, he just nodded to the table. "Good work on the chains," he said. That was enough. We loaded our grain in Portland 5 days later. The hydraulic lines were replaced with new steel piping, not flexible hoses. The pressure tests held. We sailed back out across the Columbia River bar. I stood on the bridge as we passed the North Jetty. I looked at the black rocks. The swell was breaking over them, same as before. The sea doesn't care if your rudder works or not. It doesn't care about your maintenance schedule. It just is. That incident taught me something important. Technology is great when it works. We have GPS, ECDIS, and automated systems, but when the pipe bursts and the oil runs out, all that matters is physics. Can you rig a block and tackle? Can you pull a chain? Can you work together when the alarm is screaming? We didn't save the ship because we were clever. We saved it because we knew how to use basic tools, and we didn't panic. We just solved one problem at a time until the anchor was down. If you've ever had to rig emergency gear in a bad spot, I'd be interested to hear about it.